I don't know what happened
Yeah, I
there.
don't either.
Here,
That's
hold on.
really weird.
Sorry, guys. Okay. It just didn't unmute.
Yeah.
I'll check that button.
Hey,
after
no
you're
problem. Hey, thanks, Shadow.
done. Have
Hey,
a good show.
thanks for dropping the bomb. That was strange. I had the mute button all set to go, and it just didn't register. So thanks. You can hear it now. Hey, very good. I heard. Thank you. A little bit of a tech there, but Shadow comes in and saves the day. But again, it's so good to go back on the run. So thanks very much, Shadow. It's good to have you on board as always. And interesting thing here. I just thought I'd go back and kind of a bit of a review here. This took place. This project I'm going to show you today took place some time ago, and it was interesting because I have a good friend who's a council member in a small town in Pennsylvania, and they were putting together a concept for a park and in their community. Interesting thing about that was the fact that just really interesting how according to Jeff, there's a lot of conversation going on about what should we have, what does it look like, pros, cons, a lot of contention from individuals in the process of putting it all together. And as usual, a lot of things get taken care of. For example, when there's a lot of do not get taken care of. A lot of conversation and yays and nays. What's it going to look like? What's the character going to be like? What are we using? How do we get there? So Jeff was kind enough to drop me a note and say, hey, listen, we need your help, JD, Dr. Contrast. We're going to see if we can get some visual information to clarify what these things look like. And again, before I start here, show you some of the process going through the study sets from concept sketches, and I'll show you the final illustrations that we sent out. What was interesting was that it always proves the point that a lot of conversation can be taken, but it's so interesting once that conversation is seen visually, how things begin to shift. And it was really good news at the end of it all. When all was said and done, this really helped to kind of put everybody on ease about what the system was going to look like, how they were going to deal with it, what the elements were going to be involved in it. So it settled a lot of conflict. And I think that's one of the nice things about the design process. It takes that verbal side of individuals who are not aware of what that process looks like, and begins to generate that into a solid statement of them to be much more confident and much more liable to make decisions based on input that we receive. So all that to say, it was more visual than it is anything else. And this is going to be a lot of fun here today to show you what the process is like. I started out, for me, usually, I do a lot of real quick little thumbnail sketches like this. And I'll go through a whole litany of these studies to let you see what the process was from one to the other. And I think the main thing I want to really stress here is that this was a very interesting surface or area. They only had a 60 by 60 square foot area to work with, so a total of 360 square feet to deal with. Get a lot of information put in it, and they wanted a Civil War theme of some sort, and so it involves some monuments and involves some hardscape and softscape material. So as we go through these sketches, I'll kind of point out some of the variations on theme that we're after. And the thing that I wanted to look at here from the conceptual side was very simple, and that is, how do you break up a space that small to make it compatible, welcoming, having a greeting sense to it, and again, enough information in the hardscape and softscape areas and the feature areas to make it really function well. And above all else, from a cost perspective too. So that was part of the process. So I started here with a couple of plan view studies. Again, these little areas here, like an entryway piece. There was really no designation yet about entry egress. So I just started looking at the actual space itself, putting these really quick little thumbnail sketches together. So phase one was looking at guys like this, and some little trees and some shrubbery. Same basic theme, but moving some of the elements around, putting maybe a gathering space in the center here with this rotunda, and then a couple of monuments at both ends of the park itself. And again, just above all else, I want to stress here throughout this entire presentation, these are all conceptual what ifs. There was no real guidelines given to me in terms of do this, we need this, we need this. I just put together, I got their brief, started to put some sketches together based on just conceptualization, and what my whole premise was, what about, and what if, and nothing really set in stone. And I just hopefully, when I sent them out, they would make the decision based on yays and nays and give me feedback, which they did. So this is the first sketch I did, and I went from that little plan view study, two little studies here, into a little bit of a quick historic perspective to kind of get an idea of what the actual approach is going to be. Roadway into it, a roadway through it, an alleyway, a lot of green space here, and then I think a river or a lake is nearby. So that was kind of a nice little feature to deal with as well. So that was sketch number one, and we'll just put these aside and go through the numbers here. Another variation on theme here. We opened up a little bit, looking at it from, in this case, looking from east to west, the east side here to west side there. And again, that little drive through. Looking at, again, softscape coming in, hardscape coming in, feature area here, some softscape and flowering and so forth, and then the monument at both ends, and some park benching, and some foliage and trees, and just softscape material all together. And I thought, it was interesting on this guy. Maybe we take a look at, because I think one of the concerns that the group had was the fact that one of the monuments is rather tall. They want to make sure that it's a feature to it that's going to be the primary piece. So I thought, well, why not try just elevating that area here? So a little elevation study here showing what that corner looks like, for example. Notice the sketch moves uphill a little bit, has a little bit of section to it, and it has a little bit of a lift to it. So it elevates that up to maybe about a 12-foot height overall, which is prominent in the overall site. Then I went back in and said, well, what if you don't have that? Now, what if you do include that? And maybe it's nice to put an actual entryway, like a welcoming sculptural piece or a wall study that commemorates what the park is going to do. And two variations on theme here, which in the end, I'll show you later on, became a really interesting aspect. I did not realize that for example, in their conversation with me, that was not brought up about a welcoming wall or some sort of intro piece coming into the park itself. And here I just took a chance in the second sketch. And here later on in the process, I'll show you, they came back to this study and said, that's a really neat feature. If we can afford to get that done, we're going to put that in there. So again, that's the second set of sketches we went together. So as I go through these, I think you'll see a lot of repetition, so forgive me for that. But I think it really is interesting to see that, even though you've got a small area that's 360 square feet, I still think it really does a lot of service to move it around and not fall in love with any one given format or shape or surface, and try to get a little bit more sculpture with it. Sometimes it's organic, sometimes it's sheer, sometimes it's very geometric. But again, looking at those basic themes gives that audience out there a chance of more input into what they're trying to look at and what they're trying to develop. So there's a second study. In the number 3, back to some little, by the way, I'm working with a ballpoint pen here. These are all ballpoint pen sketches, really quick little, maybe 2 to 3, 4-minute sketches per piece. Again, notice made a decision here, going back in, made basic entryway from south into north. The actual centerpiece area here, 2 monuments on the end. Some softscape trees, etc. And then again, that little wall system is kind of let you know this is where you're entering in and much more welcome space. And again, it's plan view variation here down below. So that's a third phase. And again, this is one of the primary streets going into this area here around the bend. There's a green space north of that yet, and then again, there's a river or a lake on this side. So the water features there. I'll show you that later on down the line here. So that was 3. Now we're back into number 4. Again, notice I'm really moving the shapes around here. Now taking advantage of going back to a plan view, for example, in this study, and really kind of saying, all right, what does this begin to look like? What if I break it up almost symmetrically? Just kind of open it up, almost like a reversal, positive into it and a negative out of it. Again, gathering place or softscapes in the center, monuments placed in the corners, and then some access to them for viewing purposes. And again, entry egress, very important. The flow through the park itself. Again, an entry here, and enter 4 points of entry. And again, not sure about where you want to go with this, but I just, again, I'm taking chances, as I always do, and illustrate. You never know. You just cross your fingers like, man, hopefully something hits here. And we had some great feedback. And then this was the first of maybe 14 or 15 sketches that I sent out there for approval review. And I will show you how that began to progress as we go down the line here. So there was one approach here. And again, just kind of detailing this area here was where that a very prominent piece of marble monument was going to be placed. So I thought I'd do a little detail here to show them maybe some softscape around it, and some softscape here, and some hardscape around it, and hardscape in and out to enter and egress through it. And putting some soft materials to it, and really letting this become the feature and showing some sense of scale here. And again, once that was done, maybe shifting gears again, maybe it's a different promenade area here in the plan, a little perspective study. From the plan, notice this is the area in the center, went to more of an obelisk look with maybe a flagpole, etc. Monument, it's much more of a gathering place here. Look at both the monument systems within the piece of work. So what do you think so far? Die Hard making sense? And Shadow, if you're still with me, cool. Again, I hope I'm making sense here. This is a really interesting, I think, stream for me today, because it was something that I've always wanted to do. I really enjoy landscape architecture, and this was a project I think that was handed to me from the individuals in Pennsylvania to kind of look at, we need your help here to kind of isolate and maybe settle some of the Die Hard conversations about yikes, likes, and no likes. Listening over the shoulder, interesting stuff. Yeah, well, very good, Shadow. Thank you. I really like landscape architecture. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Die Hard, the different discipline altogether in product and automobile and product design, but it's still a great challenge because there's so many things to do with materials, etc. So So far, so good. Any commentary? Feel free to fire away, Shadow and the Die Hard. Really appreciate you being on board here today. So there's the fourth study we did. Let's go to number 5 here. Opening things up a little bit. Now again, a little bit more organic with the forms now. Again, same entry egress areas, and then just coming back in, for example, maybe there's an entry here and an entry here. But again, being very softscape in the center, flagpole area, some seating areas, hardscape and softscape. But looking at shape, I think that's the biggest thing I was really looking for in this 60 by 60 area. How do you break that space up to make it compatible with flow through, traffic pattern, entry egress, all those little pieces we think about when we put together landscape architecture. This little detail here is, again, just kind of pulling this little monument out and giving it a little bit of specialized detail. Notice again, it was elevated just a bit, kind of give it some prominence and with some softscape around it, kind of draw some attention to it. So that was the 5th study we did here. Moving right along, then back into some very elaborate stuff here. I thought, you know what, if we can get away with an elevation of some sort, maybe we take a really different approach here and develop this very round form. This is all hardscaping through here. And maybe this is mounted where you actually come over the top of this thing and you can walk up and look into the areas here. It's much more of an elevation. This little study here shows us how that begins to function. Notice you've got an elevated area here, down to a flat spot, and elevated again. These monuments are located in that flat spot area. When these become mounted in terms, that's one variation. It's not shown in the plan view. These mounting areas, maybe get a chance to go up, move into some of the areas, look at the vista around the park itself. I don't know what that's going to look like. I have no idea from the drawings or the information I was given to put that together. But again, a little perspective study, again, showing, looking at this from the south end heading north, coming in the entry area, that little mounted area, where actually steps go up so you can look around. Maybe there's another element, like antique buildings or something around the area itself. I like the path. Yeah, I do too. I think that's kind of neat. It's a little system here. Again, it's a chance. Maybe they can take some of the movement without adding a lot of expense. Kind of move some of the earth around and mount it in some areas and get some elevation in this thing, so it's not a flat plane all the way through, what I heard. So it's very good insight. Good stuff there. Thank you, sir. Moving on here, number 6 and number 7. Almost the same approach again. This is where you really begin to accentuate in both areas here, for example. Now to mound these guys up quite a bit. Notice again, very highly mounted, very lowly mounted, just got a little more elevation. And again, a little walk-through path system to get the very simplified shape. And again, the contour through it, monument to monument, here in perspective, showing where some of the softscape is, some of the hardscape flow through into it. And again, just fun sketches. I mean, that's the thing that I really, when I go through a certain process of conceptualization, one thing I really focus in on, and I know this is going to sound really a bit of an abstraction, but it's so true from my point of view. I look at it from the point of view of animated fun. And I take chances in terms of what if and how come. I'm not locked into any given system about being formal or very stoic, etc. The more you open it up, I think the more fun it becomes. And I think I'm always looking from the point of view, no matter what the subject matter is, when I put my design process together or how I think about certain design pieces, that's never predictable. I like to just, maybe the happy accidents that come along the way are the ones that are really revealing. And I think that's the fun part of it here. Notice, let me go back to the sketch for a moment. In one of the entry areas, this is like a little welcoming bridge with maybe some signage on it. And when the people come through to look at the monuments, they're going to walk through this, look at some of that information, and then go to this information, both the larger monument and the smaller monument. Again, a little plan view study here showing maybe some softscape area, the hardscape entryway, and then just in and out of this process. Very different approach to looking at a very, almost a square format, but 2 regular circular areas. Kind of soften it up a little bit was a major intention in that process there, by all means. So moving right along here, again, another little study, kind of isolating it. Again, 2 rounds. Again, a different path approach into the actual concept itself. Yeah, happy accidents. Boy, you got that right, Die Hard. Sounds the Bob Ross, like the little logo. You've got the Bob Ross special. Yeah, you get those happy little trees, happy little signage and monuments. It makes a huge difference. Pardon me again. Another little variation on theme, just kind of zooming in on the monument, the actual entryway, walking around it, some of the pieces to get to it, and then looking at maybe in the plan view perspective here. Again, entry in, entry out. It's just much more open. Maybe this is much more hardscape here, softscape around it. Just interesting areas to work with here. Variation on themes, and that's what we're looking for. Number 8, and then number 9, coming back in here. Let me just get organized here. Pardon me just for a moment. There we are, end of that area. Again, going back to much more geometric, it's went from sculptural back to geometric patterns, for example, bricks and softs and hardscape areas here. Maybe in monuments outstated here, almost facing one another with a little bit of a central plaza entry egress in and out of the park itself. And again, a little detail of what that center area might look like in terms of plan view, putting together the brick and stone. A little simple elevation between the two. You're standing in the middle of that, and then of course this is an elevation showing that piece here, then down to a flat spot and back up again, and then the other monument would be over here. So again, pardon me for just again repeating myself a bit here, but it was really critical. They were interested in looking at how these monuments were going to be situated, and how you to really approach them, and then begin to work with them and read the information around that if they put placards on it. So very sensitive, almost a human touch to it in terms of ergonomically sound, that it wouldn't be confusing, but yet has a peaceful, tranquil quality about it. Sketch number 9, and 10. A little detail area here, much more. It's very simple, organic, almost like a parabolic curve, upper and lower. Looking at this plan view, and again, entry, egress, and some secondary entry and approach areas to it. But a little perspective study, kind of simplifying the overall thing. Now, in this case, the monuments are really close together, for example, very, very tightly. This may be about a 30-foot circle, but those are side by side, and an American flag or a flag that they needed to place in that particular location. Well, again, notice again the shifting of gears, geometric back to organic, organic back to geometric, compound form, elevated, non-elevated, circular shape, rectangular shape, changing the modulus at all times, and yet looking for an exploratory piece that may make a lot of sense. Then we went from the actual piece itself into, okay, let's kind of detail what that monument might look like. So I just kind of isolated a little color study here, very quickly here. Put a little perspective together with human scale, and again, some of the soft hardscape around it and some foliage behind it. But this monument, from what I understand, was going to be done in granite, and it's going to be an 8-foot height, and there were very little information in terms of platforming, so I've invented a platform, lower, upper, some seals in it, and then these 3 pieces that they wanted to put in place here. I don't know what the cost is going to be on that, but that's what they were after in terms of visual look on this monument. So what do you think? Die Hard making sense so far? Cool. Shadow, you're still with me? Very cool. Any commentary thus far, likes or dislikes? Super. Interesting, just really interesting how it all came together. So that was a detail I thought, well, maybe time to pull back. And the other one I thought of, well, what if they're going to do a monument for like a Civil War era type piece? And this is maybe a revolutionary piece itself. Why not do something that's really interesting for that monument? Another monument could be kind of cool. We actually do a really neat looking gesture piece of a rider on horseback. Again, this would be a bronze sculpture. They specified that in their brief that they wanted to do a bronze piece. And again, putting those two side by side, let's see what happens here. You put that piece in combination with the other piece with it. Let's see, 11 and 12 in sequence here was very interesting. Oh, there we are. Or there. There you go. So one would oppose the other. So they've got some pretty dramatic pieces to work with, but I guess the confusion was how to, when to, and what's it going to look like. So this is where we come in, help solve those problems, which I think is really a great tribute of the design process. It takes all that confusion and verbalization and contention about yays and nays, brings it down to a funnel so they can see what their conversation is all about. And I've said this over and over again from the point of view of design itself. Conceptualization to me is never about drawing. It's about visualization, how to visualize it, listening very carefully to what's stated, then begin to translate that language into some visual material here. So again, I thought that was a pretty bold approach to this other monument that they wanted to put. That was kind of neat, and lo and behold, they thought that was interesting as well. So again, another shot in the dark, but it hit the target, and interesting how it all began to funnel in as we go here. So from those, and at this stage of the game, I said, okay, what if instead of being a rider, maybe it's a line drawing study where he's actually standing next to the horse itself. So another little approach to that same monument, same monument study to kind of put it all into perspective for these people. Is it going to be as bold as this? Let's do this side by side here. Could be as bold as that, or as subtle as just standing by. And I think, to me, my comment to them was, in conversation, was, no, we've got to get that more dynamic. That's far too stated here, I think, or too sedated for this actual tribute piece to be put together here. So that was my 2 cents. And then as we'll find out later on in the program here and the stream, you'll see how that all kind of materialized and came together nicely. So that was another little study. So that was the first, this batch here, 1 through 13 was the first passive series I sent out. I got some feedback on it, so I went back in again from 13. I went down to sketch number 14, moved right along. Again, very tight coupled piece of elevation study of the actual park itself. Then a little bit of plan. Now again, this is where that river, the lake is, and there's that entryway coming almost like a Y shape into this very, very round, rotunded looking piece for a gathering place, for a central location, park space itself, and then monument to monument, and then again, entry egress, soft and trees, etc. They wanted, very interesting too, they stated that they didn't want a lot of trees, and I could see why. It's a very small space, it's 60 by 60, not a lot of room to work with. A lot of trees, large trees in the area, you kind of cover up some of the majesty of the monuments itself. So from there, a little variation on theme. This is looking at it from would be what, north, from south to north. Again, entry area here, and then the split going into it, and walking around the mountain. Very simple approach, and keeping the trees off the one side, on the east and west side bank of the actual park itself. Kind of open things up for them. So that's the first of the second wave, and I'm moving to, you know what, maybe it'd be kind of fun to put together a little bit of a theme here, just to be careful to put together like a scale drawing here. What these might look like. This was actually the scale where we had 3 inches equals 20 feet. So it was interesting. Every one of these increments, or 1 inch, pardon me, was equal to about 20 feet. So we had a lot of information to deal with there. This is a little bit of a design theme here. And interestingly enough, when I sent this along with the second batch, you'll see later on here, this approach suddenly kind of hit a spark. Like, you know, this makes sense. Flags in the right place, maybe. Nice little center area. Nice, almost like a parabolic curve into it to kind of get to the monuments itself. But it was a much more, it's a combination of both, a little bit of sheerness, a little bit of organic form to get it to work. So this one, I think, and you'll see in time to come, really hit a nerve. So, but I thought from my point of view, at this stage of the game, after getting feedback on this thing, one of the comments was, well, we only got 60 by 60. What does it look like in scale? So I went ahead, after I did this sketch, well, you know, let's kind of back off a little bit here and go back in and get some scale set up on this thing. See what we look at. So this is a little study based on that. And again, activation of north, south, east, and west. So we know where we are. And this kind of told a story for them, and I'll explain that in a few moments here. So I went from that sketch on to the next study, and then right back into geometric things again. Stepping out to grab some lunch for everybody. Back in a bit. Hey, no problem. Nyhard, good to have you on board, man. So here we are. Got this all put together. Went back to some geometric pieces here. Again, a little bit more traditional in terms of getting entry egress in different areas. That center plaza area for gathering itself, and the monuments opposing that, almost in the same, almost 45-degree angle, right through the actual piece itself. A little perspective study of what it might look like, and again, a little bit of variation in theme on the area here that we're looking at in terms of the center module area. So then we come back into this, I went back to, again, so a little bit of color added, again, from that geometric piece. We went from that geometric piece into a little more organic thing again. Open up the space a bit, and notice the proportions are getting a little closer. So that's interesting how that is going to really play into the fact that we've got some good information going here. The scale looked a little bit better, and then the placement was nice again. But I changed the corners, for example. Notice some of the other studies were done in the southwest corner and in the northeast corner, but we kind of shifted them a little bit, reversed that to see what it might look like. So again, it's sketch number 17, and then went back in again. That's 18, the second passive studies here. A little bit less formal, a little bit more traditional in terms of entry of almost all hardscape through the center in the view here, and then some green space around it, and then entry off of that hub area into the actual monuments themselves, so we can see where we are. And again, that would be entry, as well as the other two as well. So, and again, a little perspective sketch of what that might look like in scale. So, interesting how, again, this whole treatment was so different in terms of not knowing, for example, what the feedback was going to be in phase 1, but now phase 2 started to kind of focus on a little bit, and they started to like more and more of the organic look as opposed to the actual sheer geometry of all being very vertical or linear. So if we go back to this number 19, coming back in, I've really changed the pace. Is there going to be parking in the area? I wasn't quite sure at all, so I opened up that Northern Avenue area there. With a little bit of parking for entry and egress, and I changed the geometry a bit. I'm really not happy with this. This is a little bit too puzzling very complicated look, and certainly not what they were looking for in terms of activity. So I think that was interesting how we put that together there. Different approach to it. It was a bit forced, and this is one I did not care for, but I thought I'd submit it anyway just for review. And I came back to a much more traditional piece after that one. Notice how it went from a very bizarre angular piece, for example, in number 19, into a really sedated piece here in 20, where it goes back to a much more of a straightforward approach to the actual layout of the park itself. So again, looking at the monuments facing one another, and I think again, sort of again to be redundant, but I was really conscious of going through these sketches of putting the monuments in certain areas where there could be high visibility, corners, face to face, back to back, etc. Just variation on theme to get it to work a little bit, but this is a much more formal approach, almost like a cross pattern, and some soft sculpture and some softscape around it to kind of flatter the place itself. That was another interesting. I went back and I said, oh, you know what, I think it'd be kind of fun once you go through a series of very large perspective studies to come back in and just do some little thumbnail sketches based on what about changing the geometry again. Again, is it going to be much more cylindrical? Is it going to be round with very straightforward entryways, monuments placed, and some stone and brickwork around that? And variation there, a little bit more organic with this one. A little more organic again, a combination of both, soft and the hardscape, etc. Just a variation in theme on plan view studies. And interesting, a conversation came along here. Next sketch, at number 22. Interesting how all of a sudden they found out that somebody in town, in the area, had the accessibility to get maybe what is called a King howitzer. There's a small cannon. They might, it'd be kind of neat to put that little thing maybe in the display itself. So added another element to it. So I thought, oh, here we go. Let's add another little piece here. So I did a couple little thumbnail sketches of what that might look like, and a couple of really quick elevation, perspective sketches about where that might be placed. Even though you don't see it here, you'll see it coming up in just a moment here in terms of that could, in that area, the flagpoles could be moved out, and that cannon could move into the center. Same thing here in that piece, and the same thing here. We could take the flagpoles out, move them around a little bit, and put that cannon center up. And also another request came in for privacy purposes. Adding a fence, for example, how to move and rope it around a little bit and put together a fence to protect the area itself. So that was pretty neat. So there it is. Coming back to a larger sketch now. And again, this is starting to get some of the approach that they were liking in terms of being a little more organic in combination of both. We had some softness in this area here, and then some entry in and some across and through and out again. And again, the primary entry place here would be up on the northwest corner and the southeast corner to get into the park itself. So there's another variation without the cannon being in place yet. So there's another thumbnail sketch on that. And we come back into this beauty here. Again, now this one started to take on. So this was really the one that I think that really turned the corner for them. This is a very fast, quick study here that I put together based on some of the feedback coming in from the group. And all of a sudden, there was something about the geometry of this form to round and to round out, and then the very geometrically sheer approach coming through this the monument itself. I thought was, to me, I really preferred. I started to turn the corner a little bit in my thinking process about this. It might be an interesting approach. So a little bit that in a moment here to show you what actually did take place. It was really interesting how this sketch became a real trigger. In spite of all the stuff we've done, which is obvious, we go through a lot of variations and themes and a lot of changes and a lot of yays and nays and likes and dislikes. But this one started to hit a nerve. Maybe it was just a fashion of the orientation of the monuments and the approach of entry egress, the cannon in place now, if you notice. Flagpoles moved around a little bit, but a very simple tree line and not obscuring the actual mountain. If you're coming in from the north, boy, you get to see that line right through, and even from the south, you get to see right through the shape itself and the actual park itself. And I think that was one of the things that they being the committee, really wanted to accentuate. So enough said, this one really began to hit a nerve. Went from 24, that was a study, kind of isolate that one over here just for a bit, put that right there. Went back to number 25. After I saw that, I'll maybe go back to something geometric again. Well, it just didn't have the same romance. It was a very straightforward approach. This was all hardscape into a prominent area with a cannon in the center. Much more traditional look and a little bit of an odd shape here for the monuments to be placed in. Again, a lot of green space around it with benches and the like. It was a change of pace, but it didn't have the same austerity or the same comfort that the other sketches have had. So I kind of really quickly moved out of that very rapidly and got into something that was much more a friendlier approach. I kept seeing this thing as being very peaceful, very quiet, very tranquil, and I think that was the thing I wanted to get across. And even though these shapes kind of fit the bill, but not in this particular area. It's a small space. I didn't want to have a hard edge to it. Didn't want to have a very almost like a grinding approach to it when you come back into it. Something that's a little bit softer, a little friendlier, and a little softer looking all the way around. I mean, it would be the right approach for this take place. So 25 was done. I went back again. Notice went from that little hard edge piece. It goes over a little bit so you can see where they are. Went to that hard edge piece, and then right back into some organic again. And this one, I think, started to come back again. What we really wanted to achieve, and I think, again, without overstating it, once they saw this approach, in addition to, notice I went from number 24 and then a couple of sketches later, right back to number 26 with the same basic theme, changing a few things, like maybe added more brick or stone area here, a little more adventuresome with some of the forms itself. This had, and then this would be hardscape against maybe floral or grasses, into hardscape again, and then the cannon in the center, and then the both monuments at both ends again, with that initial approach to it. This one, I think, really started to have some romance to it, and then really started to hit all 12 cylinders. So there we are with number 25. We are back again. And number 26, again, was the one we just discussed. Had a lot more softness to it, a lot more character in it. And I went one more time, went back to that, from there into just kind of a little variation on that theme here. Once I cranked on this sketch here, went back and looked at it and said, well, what would that look like in perspective? So this is a little really rough study here. Do this and get tapped over here. There we are, right there. Those two studies, let me get up a little bit, was the one that started it, and then this one kind of comes back into play here and just kind of gives you the idea. Here it is in plan view, here it is in perspective, and it just kind of fell in place nicely here. So this was the one, I think, that finally, with a few variations and changes here, kind of began to really open up the door here. And in the second pass, which is sketch number 14 on, 14 through 27, second pass of all the studies done, this is the one they finally chose with variation themes on it here. It was much more like this, where it actually come back to number 24 for a moment here. Much more in favor of this. It took a little vote here with the group. And it was nice to hear from them, for example, and the feedback coming back that for the first time in months, they've been discussing this thing, going back and forth verbally about what they should do, what it should look like, how come what the add, what should not add. And my sketches, and don't misunderstand what I'm about to say here, my sketches did an awful lot to clarify some of the mysteries and really put it into some format of approach that they can get into a build contract, an idea of what the cost might be, materials might be involved in it, and very good feedback as a result of the sketches going out there to solve that problem. So let me do this for a moment. Let's look at number 24 here. This is back in the stack. It goes back, I think, right. Goes there, the 25, again, 26, and the 7. We are right there. Good deal. Now, all that said and done, all there, go back and now, this is what happened here. This is the actual piece itself. Sorry, that was all said and done. This is it. It was all said and done. This is a sketch that really kind of set the tone, turned the corner for them, and really made a huge difference. It was simple. It was direct. It had the materials involved in it. The right number of trees, a very softscape and hardscape areas. It had the cannon that they were hoping to purchase to be placed into the actual piece itself. So it was very, very healthy in terms of this has some potential. So with their permission, I went ahead and said, okay, if that's the one you're buying, let's go ahead and look at this guy from the point of view of let's take that sketch, that really loose thumbnail sketch, and I created a very hard line drawing based on that theme, and this is what it began to look like. Again, notice adding little things like benches from human scale. Again, the location of the cannon, the actual monument, the flagpoles opposing one another, the sculpture at one end, horseback, and then the monumental piece at the other opposite end, Parkway. Again, your primary area is up and through here from the north into this area, and then an exit to the south, and again, something south and north. So you've got a 4-quadrant area to entry and egress as part of. So this was the actual study itself that was generated from sketch number 24. and it became the final study. So I don't know, Die Hard, are you back yet? I hope you haven't missed something here. And hope you got some lunch, but I hope you're back in. Let me know what you think so far. And it would be good to hear your input on this thing. So this is where we are, the line drawing study. And it was interesting that, okay, once I got the line drawing, I sent that out. So what do you think of this? Are we ready to go? No problem. All came back thumbs up. So I went from the line drawing study to this. There's the actual color study right there. That same concept. Just putting it all together with the hardscape, softscape, some floral areas in through here, some grasses, for example. They wanted some of that western, midwestern look of grasses, like tall grasses, plain, like you see in the plains. Got that back in. Notice again, floral areas, benches to kind of relax and reflect in some areas that you look at here. And again, the very center area, very large area. That's probably about, maybe if this is 20, that's about a 20-foot circular area. That gives you a captive area for the cannon itself. And this, interesting about this sketch too, I thought when I sent this back out, you know, this is really interesting how what could take place here is this. I put hardscape in here, It's kind of nice, and I mentioned to them, the option is such where this green space could come into this area, and that park bench could move over here, so go to 3 and 3. Then this would be a green space, and it's lawn space here, and lawn space here is balance it out a little bit, so it's not so heavy-handed with the cement work or concrete work. So that's going to be their decision to make, but nonetheless, they were really happy with the fact that the sketch kind of settled the bill for them here. So let's get rid of this guy. And once again, I just want to make sure, Die Hard, are you there? Hope. We'll go back and review these for you. Let me know when you step back in. It'd be great to have you put on this thing. So let's move this over a little bit. So once again, all throughout the entire process, if you notice, go back to this sketch for a moment here. You notice throughout the entire process, there are these monuments that are in play here. One again was the actual granite piece, or the actual formica piece based up on this here. The other one was a sculptural individual. Don't know what that's going to be, but it was a horseback area here. So I thought we'll do a little detail here, what that might look like, and again, what the entry wall might look like as you come in. This area here in the northwest end would be the actual primary major area stepping into the actual park itself. So now we're right there. It'd be kind of neat to take that thing and say, all right, that's neat. There it is. So and from that, I went to this line drawing, playing up on the actual sculpture itself on horseback, what the welcoming wall might look like, and what that little granite area. Last but not least, from that line study, went ahead and began to generate this. This is the actual final piece that was submitted to them. Right about, see it? Good. There it is, right there. So again, the bronze sculpture itself, get that on its mount. Very simple, approaching the actual itself. So a little bit of placard area information on this individual, where that might be, and then a little detail of this placard area here. This very large 8-foot monument with people coming in and looking at it, give it a sense of human scale. And again, just with hardscape around it, a little bit of softscape. There'll be much more of that, obviously. Just a detail of what that area might look like, and all predicated on this guy and that guy and the actual welcoming wall. And then last but not least, the little welcoming wall. They thought it was interesting that they add that as you approach the site, for example, from the northeast. You come back in, and there's a little welcoming wall here that tells you what the story of the park is. So you see that first, then into the monument, and then into the monument. So that does it. I mean, that's overall a pretty interesting approach to this entire process. And I really hope, for example, that this has been of some insight to you about as far as the process is concerned. Very, very satisfying to hear that some good things came out of this process and help clarify the group's intentions about what they wanted to do, how they wanted to solve certain things. I mean, back in order, and if the Die Hard comes back in, we can take a look at it one more time here. There it is. Again, it's the line drawing there for the actual overall site. This is the line drawing study that was based on here. Again, let me put these back in order. This was all part of the process. There. Number of sketches generated to get there. An awful lot of content, but I think very necessary, because you're dealing with a lot of areas here that are really sensitive in terms of people's concept and ideas about what they want to do, how they see certain things, their concerns about cost, obviously, who's going to do the work, how they're going to contract it out. All the elements are part of the process. In the design systems here and working with people, very sensitive indeed. So overall, took an awful lot of sketches in terms of putting together the format, but I think the nice thing that I enjoy about this process is you're dealing with people who have a real love affair with their community and a real concern about maintaining their heritage. And that's what this process was all about. And I think that's why I'm going to show that today on the program. As I said earlier, too, I wanted to start this on Wednesday last week. I had that sinus difficulty. I just could not see to save my life. So we're back at it here again today with some neat stuff. Great connection. Yeah, and hey, Victoria, good to have you, Doctor. Nice to have you on board. Yeah, it's a great sense of connection. Absolutely correct. And did you see all the, did you get a chance to see the final pieces, Victoria? If not, I'll put them back up again so you can take a look at the process from beginning to end. Interesting how it all came together. And you're right, the connection side is very, very, very sensitive. I mean, these people had a real concern about the city, their village, and they want to maintain that heritage. They had some neat things happening around it. I did not. Just to colorize. Oh, okay. Here we go this way. Let's go back to this. After all is said and done, Victoria did the final line study of this park. Let me pull the sketch out that actually did not see that. Let's see if I can pull that. Sketch number 24 again. This was the one, after all was said and done, this is the sketch that kind of generated their interest in terms of overall format, and it's very small, 60 by 60 area here. So from this thumbnail that was sent out in the second wave, got the feedback from them and got the green light to use this one as a base theme to kind of develop the final sketch, or sketches. So that started it. There it is. And this is the line drawing study here. The actual piece with everything in place, human scale, benching, etc. This is a line study. And from the line study, went right ahead and cranked out this full color study. There it is. There's the actual finished piece. So what do you think, Victoria? Meet your approval? There she is. That's the actual finished piece in terms of, yeah, me too. It's a forced engagement. And I just kind of stretch it a little bit to kind of give it a little more drama. But that's the actual finished illustration piece. I went back out for their approval for costing purposes. I think it's good. It's not grid like alive. Yeah, I think that, it's interesting you make that comment, Victoria, because one of the commentary coming back from one of the funders or one of the individuals in the council in the city said, it's almost it's very active looking. It doesn't look, he said, quote, it looks like alive. It's welcoming. It looks like it wants to invite you. And I think that was very perceptive. And thank you, Victoria, for saying that, because that's exactly what they felt as well. When they saw the little thumbnail sketch, this started it, little 2-minute sketch, and into this final piece here. So that was the actual overall part. And I went back and did a line drawing of some of the details involved in that. So the line drawing looked like this. It was, again, the mounted horseback, the welcoming sign, and some of the tribute pieces that are going to be in the actual piece. So from that line drawing, I went ahead and just generated this to the final study. There it is. What these pieces might look like to give them some idea of the sense of scale with human interaction. That was basically it. This was a bronze piece that we're going to have done by somebody they'll farm it out to for a costing purpose. But this little welcoming wall was interesting because they wanted to know, visitors to know what this thing was all about as far as the presence of the place. You could have gotten the basic hum. Yeah, the angles I think are really interesting. The angles are really interesting. You're going back to this, I'm sure. Angles are such that there's not, there's a little bit of a skewness in it that kind of takes it away from being typical. Well, thanks very much, Ventura. Always really helpful with your input. Great to have you on board. It's always very insightful. You give me some really good insight and some good thoughts to work with from time to time. So there's the actual finished piece itself. So what do you think, Victor? Does that make sense? You meet with this approval as well, as far as finishes and detail? Again, this is all conceptual. Nothing was given to me in terms of we need this, 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 and this. This is all from the hip. You could have this, you could have this, you could have this. No matter, as I said at the very beginning of the stream, matter of what if. That's really interesting. So thanks very much, Victoria. Great to have you on board. I hope your family are doing well. It's always a joy to have you on board. And a diehard if you're back in. I hope you get a chance to pick up the rest of the stream here and pick up maybe you missed. So any other further commentary, Victoria, or diehard if you're with me at all? Feel free. Any overall commentary? Much appreciated. Taking off. No. There's a yeah, thanks, Diehard, for all that snow. Unbelievable. Yeah, you guys have really been hit. Whereabouts in the country are you at Victoria? Are you Midwest? Interesting. Really interesting. Here we are, gang. So nice to have you. Syracuse, oh my goodness, you're just really amazing. It's been amazing. It's funny how that happened up that part of the country. We have nothing down here. It's cold weather, but the sun is shining, very little snow. And boy, my heart goes out to you guys. Are you okay family-wise, though? Everything good with your household? Let's hope that's the case. Boy, really a brutal run. Oh, that's good. That's good news. I'm glad everybody's in great shape. So, well, let's do this, gang. I think let's go back and put this center up. There was the actual culmination of all the studies sent out there. And I will say this in closing, too. One of the things I enjoy the most in working with individuals, I've not seen this group. I've never met them before. I just took a chance and delivered the goods for my friend in Pennsylvania. And sure enough, I got a series of comments back from them in my email about how really grateful they were for me to take on the challenge here to help them through this process. And you know what? When it's all said and done, to me, that's more important than any other remuneration you get. I mean, to have people approve your work, sight unseen, not having met them, not knowing them, was a real honor for me. And I think that was part of the entire thing that I enjoyed the most in this whole project. So hopefully next week we'll kind of switch gears and go back into maybe do some Bentley Speed 6, a Blue Train Special. I don't know. I haven't really put together a program yet, but they'll go back to something more product related. As you all know, from stream to stream, I like to change subject matters quite a bit. Everything from vehicle to product to architecture, landscape architecture, changing pace, speed form studies, concept sketches, you name it. I just like to change it up quite a bit. So we'll keep you posted for next week, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you again, going full speed next Wednesday with the program. And while I'm at it, if you have a moment, please drop me a note at jim@drcontrast.com. I'd love to hear your feedback, and if I can help you with any things, hey, tanks, cars, and buildings, yeah, absolutely. A lot of fun, Die Hard. It just changes all the time. And above all else, the reason for the change is for me anyhow, is to maintain the challenge. I just keep my, whatever little bit of skill set I have, to keep it sharp and move it around and not fall in love with anything. Even though I'm a car guy, this stuff I love. Architecture and landscape architecture. Really huge challenge. So I've always enjoyed it, and we'll keep changing it around as long as people are watching. And thank you again for tuning in. Again, anything I can help you with drawing wise or any content work, please drop me a note at jim@drcontrast.com. If you would, please just visit my website at drcontrast.com. There's a drawing program, and so my Instagram, Twitch, YouTube is information on there as well. So please feel free to do that. And I do take commissions. So, you know, if anybody that wants to do a commission piece on an automobile or a piece of architecture, please pass the word along. I'll be more than happy to work with them and get something to them. I love doing commission work, and it'd be fun to do so. Once again, all the very best, Victoria. All the best to you and your family out there in snowy Syracuse. Take care of yourself. Die Hard, thank you for tuning in. And when you come back in, Shadow Man, always good to have you on board as well. So all that to say, gang, that never forget to dare to be great, because you are. Have a great week. We'll see you next Wednesday, folks. Thanks you so much. Take care. Bye-bye now.